People with disabilities should be able to arrive on the site, approach the building, and enter as freely as everyone else. Make sure there are enough accessible spaces for parking. For 1 to 25 spots in the parking lot, the required minimum number of accessible spaces is 1. For 26 to 50, it's 2. For 51 to 75, it's 3, and so on. Look to see if the accessible parking spaces have a vertical sign with the international symbol of accessibility. And then look to see if the van accessible spaces have van accessible signage. Make sure there are enough van accessible spaces. At least 1 of every 6 accessible spaces must be van accessible, with a minimum of 1 van accessible space in all cases. Van accessible spaces must have a minimum vertical clearance of 8 feet 2 inches for lift-equipped vans. Van accessible spaces must also be 8 feet wide, with an 8-foot wide access aisle. If not, then you can reconfigure the parking layout by placing traffic cones or other temporary barriers to define the parking spaces. 8-foot wide van accessible access aisles work well for deploying lifts and unloading wheelchairs. But sometimes people will unnecessarily park in the aisle or place items in the aisle, like a dumpster. These areas need to remain clear so that users can deploy a wheelchair lift or completely open their vehicle door to unload a wheelchair or walker. One solution to keeping access aisles open is to mark these spaces with orange cones. Check to see if accessible parking areas are maintained. This means the site includes removal of snow, gravel, rocks, carts, and repainting of pavement markers. Then check to see if the accessible parking area is level in all directions, with no built-up curb ramps protruding into the access aisle. If not, there are a couple of solutions. One is to modify the accessible parking area so it has a level access aisle and accessible curb ramp. Or you could move the accessible parking area to a place that is relatively level in all directions. See if the access aisles are part of the accessible route to the accessible entrance. If not, a solution for this is to create a temporary curb ramp. See if there is at least one accessible route of travel from public sidewalks and bus stops to an entrance. There are several questions you should ask about any routes of travel. Is the route at least 36 inches wide? Is the route stable, firm, and slip-resistant? Does the route have a cross slope that is less than 2%? To be safe, the route needs to be nearly flat, side to side. Do curbs have curb cuts or ramps at drives, parking, and passenger drop-offs? Do curb ramps and ramps have slopes no greater than a 1 to 12 ratio? Do all ramps with a rise greater than 6 inches have handrails and edge protection? Please note that accessible routes with slopes 1 to 20 or less are not considered ramps. Therefore, they don't need handrails or edge protection. To facilitate a wheelchair or walker user, there should be a 5-foot-long level landing at every 30-foot horizontal length of ramp, at switchbacks, and at the top and bottom of ramps. For a double door, there should be at least one 32-inch leaf.